Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in London today on his first trip to the UK since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began nearly a year ago. Zelenskyy first met with UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and then addressed Parliament, where he pushed for more support for his country's fighter pilots. And he also met with King Charles today. Imtiaz Tyab is in London with more on this visit. So President Zelenskyy, he's given several of these speeches. You know, he definitely sort of reinforces his appreciation for the support that he's been getting, but he's not shy about asking for specific help. What were some of the highlights from his speech?
Anne-Marie, Shanelle, very good to be with you. And you're absolutely right. This was a very direct speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. I think the one phrase that is going to stand out is when he said to British lawmakers, quote, "Give us wings," and then said very clearly that his country needs fighter jets. They need warplanes. That is, of course, something that Ukraine has not received from any country, not the U.S., not the U.K., certainly not from any other NATO or European country. But it is something that they want. Now, what's perhaps interesting here is that Rishi Sunak, the UK Prime Minister, has said to Mr. Zelenskyy a few days ago that he would be providing what he described as, quote, NATO caliber training, training on NATO caliber fighter jets for Ukrainian forces, but of course stopped short of offering any kind of promise of fighting or sending war jets. But some believe that that could be a signal that that position is softening.
How do people in the UK feel about giving more aid to folks in Ukraine?
Look, Shanelle, I think the long and short of it is the vast majority of people support Ukraine, have a lot of, watch the news every night, see the devastation, see the destruction, and that, of course, hasn't soured public opinion here. But you have to remember when about $2.5 billion UK dollars has been sent to Ukraine in hardware and that sort of thing, and you consider the fact that this is a country which is struggling very deeply economically, obviously a cost of living crisis, but many seeing this country as potentially going into recession, that there are some concerns about just how much money is being sent. But as we saw from all those lawmakers sitting in Westminster Hall, all the pageantry of this country on full display, that support, at least at the most powerful in this country, is still very much there.
President Zelenskyy is also meeting with King Charles. Prince Charles did not shy away from politics per se, but King Charles is in a little bit of a different position. I'm curious about what they may be discussing and what the purpose of this is. Is it more about sort of the image and sort of the message sent by the image, or can King Charles actually sort of play a role in this?
You're right. Prince Charles certainly was not shy about discussing his own politics, but he's now the sovereign. He's now King Charles. So many people will be paying very close attention to that interaction that he's going to be having with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. They will be meeting at Buckingham Palace, of course, not far from where I'm standing right now. But I think what's important here, and I think you really hit on a key point, Anne-Marie, is the symbolism here. When we were looking back at the Queen's life, this was a monarch who met more heads of states than any of us could even imagine, and it was made very clear that when it came to the government here, that they would more often than not use these visits with heads of states and the Queen as a way of telegraphing the kind of importance that they have to whatever leader they were trying to build whatever relationship at that time. And I think this meeting with the King and indeed with Mr. Zelenskyy is part of that tradition, but it goes beyond that. While he was the Prince of Wales, he did meet with Volodymyr Zelenskyy, something Mr. Zelenskyy mentioned in his speech to those British lawmakers, and said that his meeting with the King was not only his honor, but an honor that he shared with all Ukrainians.
And Imtiaz, speak to us a bit about what's next on the agenda for Zelenskyy. We're hearing now he's heading to Paris.
Yeah, I mean, look, we only heard about an hour or so before he landed that Volodymyr Zelenskyy was coming here to the UK. Of course, a surprise visit, only his second visit outside of the country since the start of Russia's invasion, of course, visiting the United States. But now we're hearing that as soon as he wraps up with his visits here in the UK, he will be traveling to Paris. In Paris, he will be meeting with Emmanuel Macron, the French president, and he'll also be meeting with the German chancellor. These, of course, have been two key allies for Ukraine as well, but they also happen to be two countries with the biggest economies. Now, very quickly, I do want to add that in the background of all of this, this appeal for help, this appeal for weaponry, this appeal for support is also Ukraine's push to join the EU and to be part of NATO. Of course, the EU is a country, or rather is a union that Macron and the German Chancellor are part of, but they're also part of NATO, just like this country here is as well. And so one would imagine that that will be part of the conversation too. Anne-Marie, Shanelle.
Imtiaz Tyab, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate this.
Appreciate you.